So I'm not sure if you're aware of this. It's very exciting. But we have a budding brewery right here in Milford. CraftRoots Brewing. They're doing exciting, fresh things. And we have Fabry here to talk more about it. Welcome, Mo.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm well today. It's great to be here.
Wow, so CraftRoots Brewing. I guess we just start there. What is CraftRoots Brewing?
So CraftRoots Brewing is a dream of mine that I've had for a while, but it's basically the concept of producing beers using the freshest ingredients that are grown right here in the Northeast. So barley, malted here and grown here, and hops also grown here by farmers.
I guess we got to go backwards here because I
Sure.
love beer. I'm a big beer fan. I don't know a lot about it. It's just
Okay.
like whiskey. I love whiskey. I don't know a lot about it,
Yeah.
except that it tastes good. So what makes up a beer? And what makes up different types of beers, IPAs and the wheats
Right.
and all that?
Right. So there's 4 basic ingredients in beer. There's what's called malt, which could be any grain. So typically wheat, barley, rye, hops. And then the yeast is the agent that ferments the sugars that comes from the grain. And then water, of course. So
Okay.
those 4 components, there's a multitude of ways you can combine those to come up with different colors and different flavors. And the beer styles have evolved over time. Historically speaking, some countries have their own beer style that they produce based upon what was available to them locally.
Some people like a hoppy beer. Some people
Yeah.
like a malty beer.
Yeah.
What do you guys specialize in? Is there...
So for
Anything
now,
specific?
we're leading off with a couple of IPAs. IPAs are kind of the hottest market right now, but I'm not brewing those for that particular reason. I really want to highlight some of the hop varieties that are on the rise in the Northeast.
So an IPA is
So-
a hoppy beer.
It is. It
Okay.
stands for India Pale Ale, so it's a style that that originated when the British Empire colonized India and produced beer and then shipped it all the way down to India. So hops, they were discovered to be a preserving agent. So brewers would throw in more hops in the beer to make that voyage. But as a result, it also is a lot more bitter, a lot more sharp in flavor.
Is it a punchy flavor?
Gives it a punch, yeah.
Yeah. And not everybody loves the hoppy flavor.
Definitely not, or they don't know that they love it.
Okay.
They may have to acquire, I suppose, a taste for it. I know a lot of people who started out drinking fairly light beers, and over the course of time and being exposed to hops, they really discover that they can run the gamut from being citrusy to being kind of floral, very aromatic. There's a lot of different flavor profiles with hops, too.
Craft brewing has been on the uprise for what, maybe 20 years now, 15, 20 years? I mean,
Yeah.
really, recently it's
Yeah.
popping up in every town.
For sure.
Now, I know I've done research to see where the closest brewery is
Mm-hmm.
for different reasons. And there's nothing like right in this area, which is awesome.
I'm delighted
that
to see
you are
that.
here.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that. That is fortuitous for me. But I have been brewing for quite a while. I brewed professionally after I went to brewing school about 15 years ago.
Okay.
But I've always had it as a dream to have a real, truly local neighborhood kind of brewery. Not
When you were
just-
brewing, where were you professionally?
So I started out in Boston. I worked for a couple of brew pubs in the Boston area, and then made the jump out to a production regional brewery in Western Mass. And
How did you get into it? Because, I mean, this is going to come off sexist, but
No,
you don't
not at
see a
all.
lot of women brewing.
That's absolutely true. There are more now than ever. We even have our own society now of women brewers,
Oh, that's
which is
great.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I guess I don't fit the typical profile, but it's been one of those experiences of following my dream and discovering that when you have a passion for something and you really work hard at it, it doesn't matter whether as long as you can do your job and, physically carry some of the weights that go along with brewing. I got into it probably like almost every brewer. I started home brewing. Kind of a funny story. I bought a homebrew kit for a friend as a Christmas present.
Sure.
Sat on the shelf because, it's an awful lot of work to keep things clean. I always joke that being a brewer is really 90% being a janitor. I mean, sterilization is just, paramount.
Yeah.
It sat on the shelf, and I thought to myself, I'd like to give that a try. I'd already experienced a lot of different craft brews that mostly Sam Adams had, begun pushing out in the mid-'90s. And I fell in love with it. It combined so many things I love. It was, for me, everything clicked.
Well, how long is the process from start to finish for a good beer? Like not amateur-wise, not professionally.
Yeah. I would say ballpark about 2 weeks for an ale,
not
slightly
bad.
longer, yeah.
The wait has got to be the hardest part, though.
Absolutely, yeah. Watching it every day.
Yeah.
It's like watching a pot boil. It's fermenting. You want to know what it's going to taste like, but you got to wait for it to come to fruition.
I can imagine you go through some bad batches before you get a real good batch.
There's definitely a learning curve, I
Yeah.
would say there. Yeah. Thankfully, I got a lot of that out before I went to brew school professionally. So ever
Oh, wow.
since
Where was that?
then-
I didn't know there was. Well, I
Yeah.
assume there was, I guess. process, but
Yeah, so I
it was
went.
like a myth to me. I've never seen a brew school, but I guess there is one.
There's one, as you would expect, they're kind of sprinkled across the nation, but a lot in California, and
Okay.
then there's a really well-known one in Chicago. So I chose the route through the American Brewers Guild in California, and studied there, and then did an apprenticeship in Boston. And I was so fortunate to find a female brewer at that time in
Yeah.
Boston. Apprenticed with her, and then had a second mentor, also female, help me at my second location. So.
How are we as beer drinkers in Massachusetts compared to the rest of the world since you've traveled?
I would say there's a lot of stunning similarities. Like if you want to compare East Coast to West Coast, a lot of focus on IPAs, a lot of
Yeah.
focus on hoppy flavors. Certainly, this movement that I'm really thrilled about is using local ingredients. It's super prevalent. On
I haven't
the West
heard much
Coast,
of
too.
this before.
Oh, it's
How did you get this idea?
So I was really fortunate to visit a friend in grad school in Germany right after I got out of college, and didn't really know what was in beer. Had tried it, in college, obviously, but I had an opportunity to see a malt house, to see barley growing, to see hops growing, and for me that kind of piqued my interest. I realized how fresh the beer tasted, and it was starkly different from anything I had tasted before back in the States. So that kind of sat on the back burner, germinated, I guess, for a while, and then a good 5 or 6 years ago, there's been a local food movement that we all know about.
Sure.
There have been some real visionaries in the beer world here in the Northeast, and by that I mean folks who are maltsters. They work with the farmers to take the barley and then convert that so that us brewers can make beer with it. So they are now providing the actual ingredient, the malt, that can be grown locally here in the Northeast and then malted as well here in the Northeast. Once that became possible, that for me was like my aha moment where I knew that was the compelling reason to get back in and start making beer, not just brewed locally, but with locally grown ingredients.
And it's funny that, and maybe this was on purpose, but you teamed up with Adam over at Depot Street Tavern because he's the same way with his ingredients.
Exactly. I've enjoyed his food for a long
it's
time.
amazing.
He's an amazing guy. Not only that, but he's just, a Milford legend
Sure.
almost in the food industry. Yeah. So, and just this, super compelling background. So his focus on having a farm to table and super fresh ingredients, I felt was like a perfect fit for me to have my first location for my beer. And he's a great guy, was super receptive to the concept, and gave us our first shot. And so far, so good.
Why wasn't that common to begin with? You would think that any brewer would just buy locally
Yeah.
and go to local farms and
Right.
get their ingredients,
Right.
but is it hard for these items to grow locally?
So that's like such an astute question. So this is kind of an old school idea. It sounds like a new idea, but this is the way all beer was brewed pre-prohibition. So
Okay.
a brewery typically was also a malt house. So they might grow their own barley, they would malt their own grains and then brew it. So it really, you found a number of breweries that were within a small town. They could have a handful of them. But then there are a lot of factors, but mainly industrialization and also having the large swaths of grain being grown in the upper Midwest. It was just more economically possible for a mass commodity like that to be produced there. So it kind of fell away. But this is what I mean by the visionaries who are maltsters and hop farmers as well. Pre-Prohibition, New York was the leading state producing hops. Now it's out in the Yakima Valley in the Pacific Northwest. But we kind of fell away from that, and now we're really just returning to our roots of the way beer was made.
That's
back.
amazing.
Yeah, it's really a pretty cool
So
story.
big industry is just killing everything. I mean, they
Yeah,
kind of
it's-
killed the taste.
Yeah,
but
it's
then,
kind of monopolizing, I guess I would say. Or, I mean, it makes sense for economic reasons, but in some
Sure.
ways, yeah, you're really kind of homogenizing the supply. And this is really about focusing on local flavor.
you must find it interesting that some of the bigger companies are now trying to promote themselves with smaller beers and smaller batches and trying to be more like the craft guys.
Yeah, that's right. It's got a lot of the big guys really nervous for, for their market share. But I love to see that because, as consumers, we're really all developing an awareness for flavor and for taste. And
Right.
we truly want to support local businesses. And we're beginning to see now that we want to know who's brewing our beer, where it was brewed. We don't really care about the glitzy label. We really want to
Sure.
get down to the brass tacks and say, who grew this, who grew these ingredients, and get to know the people behind it.
Could you say that craft roots is healthier? Like, because it's all homegrown, you know what you're picking from, and
I think that would be true to some extent. I'm using not all organic, but some organic ingredients. So
As much
on
as you
that
can.
level, yeah, as much as is available, I certainly prefer that. And there is a large percentage that is organic. But I also think what's healthier about it is the fact that you're drinking my product at its very freshest. So I'm brewing at the moment in small batches, and much of what I'm initially introducing now is as little as 3 to 4 weeks old. So
Oh, wow.
it may be healthier, but it certainly, I feel, is going to be a lot more flavorful. It's an unfiltered product, so there is some yeast in it. And there's some healthy byproducts from, vitamin B that's in yeast. So
I'm just trying to find more of a reason to drink. So tell me it's healthy. I can go home, tell the wife. It's okay. I didn't go to the gym, but I was drinking at Depot Street Tavern. I
Right.
was having some craft roots.
Yeah.
Is that the only location right now you're at?
We soon will be at, that's the only draft location. We soon will be at Hickey's Wine and Spirits.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're having a grand tasting November 7th, and we'll be there pouring samples. And for now, I'm really focusing on having those two as my Milford locations.
Sure.
Really true to being in a Milford locale.
Do you see yourself growing? I mean, honestly, could you see yourself nationwide, or do you really want to stick to being a small town girl with a small town beer?
Truly want to stick to being a small town girl with a small town beer.
Something really respectable about that. So that's
well,
great.
thank you. I
That's
mean,
how we work as a station here. We don't want to grow too big
Right.
because we're serving a small community that trusts us, and I would imagine that's the same
Yeah.
with what you're doing.
That's very true. What I say about my business, it really is all about the relationships that I'm developing with my farmers and with my maltsters that I work with. But the same will be true of consumers. We want there to always be that honesty and that integrity, that when people come in and they, in the future, can sit down and have a pint that's poured across the bar right where the beer was made. They can see the brewer, they can see the ingredients, they can come to know that what they're drinking is connected to the land, but not just the land out there on a wider scale right here in our community.
Sure, the gas was purchased in this town. The supplies were
Yes.
purchased locally.
That's right. Yeah.
So it all goes back to the community.
That's right. And, on that level as well, this is about supporting sustainable agriculture. And then there's also a few byproducts from the brewing process, so the spent grain and the spent yeast and hops. I'm returning those also to some farmers to feed their cows and feed their pigs.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's kind of connecting that circle between where the ingredients are grown, between the consumers, and then back to the earth.
What's the process as a brewer coming up with something different? There's millions of beers out there right now.
Yeah.
A lot of them taste the same.
Yeah.
But besides the story, what do you do to make sure yours is just a little different than the other guy?
That is a super key question. I was not really motivated to get back into brewing unless I had something truly unique, something that I felt I could stand behind and say, this is something nobody else is doing. So while I'm not the only person doing what you might call a field to glass kind of beer out there, I am sourcing all of my ingredients truly from within the Northeast, and also using, as these little craft malt houses pop up, beginning to use their ingredients and get an understanding of how theirs taste different or provide a different color. So it really is about having that connection with the artisans out there that are making the ingredients. And
You're always
combining
learning.
them. Yeah, there's a lot to learn, but that makes it pretty cool.
Every day's different, right?
That's right. Yeah, I remember saying that as a kid. I need a job where every day is going to be different.
Now, what else do you drink besides your own beer, CraftRoots? What
Sure.
else do you drink?
I really, truly support the local breweries around here.
Yeah.
I was just out at Jack's Abbey on Saturday
Oh,
night with some
great.
great friends. Yeah, awesome.
They've got that great little bar area, too. We
Yeah.
can sample everything.
Totally. I
Nice
love
people. The
that.
guys are great over there.
They're fantastic. And having that kind of community feeling where you sit down at a group table and you might be sitting next to someone you've never met before, it really fosters that kind of conversation. I drink Wormtown beer. I love the Bee Hoppy. Ben Roche.
I
has
just had
been
that the other night. That's really fantastic.
amazing. Ben Roche has been somebody that's really been behind awareness for local ingredients in beer, too. There's a lot of us now who are really starting to find that to be fascinating to play with in the brew house.
I think you find that there's, being the small town guy, or gal, for
Yeah.
in your case, there's enough beer out there for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not competing with Wormtown. I mean, you are to a sense, but, they're in Worcester. You've got Milford.
Yeah.
Jack's Abbey's got Framingham.
Yeah.
And, of course, you can always go out and have all three
Yeah.
at a location if it's available. But it's nice to know that there's friendly competition, but
For
there's
sure.
not mean dangerous competition between you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoy drinking beer from Berkshire Brewing Company. That's the regional brewery that I worked for, and that's a brewery that's really also been pioneering behind self-distributing their product and really focusing on using local ingredients, but also in a local environment here. And I just think, their beers are phenomenal as well. It's pretty cool to be able to reach out to these folks who are brewers and ask for, a little bit of input as I'm kind of learning my way. And everyone's been so supportive and so helpful.
Nobody's going to give away the secret recipe, though.
No. Everybody wants to develop their own.
Yeah. So what's next? Where are you brewing right now?
So we have a small pilot location, so it's
Okay.
right here in Milford. So every batch I make is brewed by me in Milford. So we have been so fortunate to have the support of the town of Milford behind us with this small business idea. I would say where we are now is phase 1. So by design, we move on next to phase 2, which would be having a tap room and a brewery at a location here in Milford where we could have some retail presence. So by that I mean we could brew the beer, have tours, have people get pints across the bar, and have a tap room.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that is really exciting. I'm kind of what I would call, I guess, in that business term, proof of concept phase,
Yep.
to really be able to see, is there a market for a product? How is our beer received? But truly, we feel like Milford needs a community location where people can come hang out together
Absolutely.
as a group and talk to one another, and possibly combine some small plates with locally made food, and have this be a supportive environment for agriculture and the community as well.
Sounds like it's step one of revitalizing the downtown area. I mean, Milford's wonderful. There's so many great local businesses. We've seen downtown change throughout the years. But in my head, that's the idea I have. More places you can go to
Yeah.
over the course of a night. Just
Yeah,
walk.
that's
Be able
right.
to walk around.
That's right.
And go to CraftRoots Brewing
Yeah.
and then go down to Depot Street Tavern.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
So that's fantastic that we have people like you with a phase in mind. You've got phases in mind. That's great. So good luck with phase 1. Sounds like it's going great now. And here's to phase 2. I don't have a beer in my hand, but the
Cheers.
coffee will do.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks, Mo.
Thanks, Ray.